Good morning. My name is Tia Hodges, and I'm on behalf of Citi Foundation, and welcome you to Tackling the Barriers for Young Women of Color in IT. We are so thrilled to have you all here and joining us in this very important, and I think is going to be a very thoughtful and dynamic conversation. Just wanted to say thank you to our friends at Google, Peter Gay, for hosting us here today and for welcoming us into your space. In 2014, the Citi Foundation launched Pathways to Progress. Our focus was to engage young people ages 16 to 24, help them develop skills, and connect them to employment opportunities in the U.S. Since that time, we've taken Pathways global, and we've doubled down on our commitment to investing in young people globally, with the goal of investing $100 million in nonprofit organizations across the world and reaching 500,000 young people, just like many of you, just like yourselves, to help you develop the workplace skills, connectivity to employment and engagement, and economic progress for yourselves and your family. As part of this commitment, we were thrilled earlier this year to announce a partnership with NPower, really to drill down and do a little bit more of a focus on helping to increase the number of young women in technology. 40 by 22, as it is lovingly known, I don't know how much it's known outside of NPower and Citi Foundation, but 40 by 22 drives to increase NPower's the number of young women participating with NPower by 40%, or to 40% by 2022. Let me say that again. This is a mouthful. 40 by 22 drives to increase NPower's young women participants to 40% by 2022, with the goal of placing 2,400 young women of color in technology jobs by 2022. Now, I had a boss many years ago who would say, that's a BHAG, or a big, hairy, audacious goal. So you can feel free to steal that, but it's a big number, and yet it's a very small number because there are so many young women who want to be engaged, who need to be engaged, sitting in this room as well as globally. In addition to focusing on increasing the number of young women in the classroom, what I think is so smart about our investment and partnership with NPower is that we're also focused on increasing diversity in the classroom. And so what does that look like? That means helping NPower strategically increase the number of women teaching in its classroom. So it's a bit of a multiplier effect, if I may use that word, because you're increasing the number of young women of color, but you're also supporting those efforts by increasing women in the classroom. Research has shown, and I think many of us know it innately, that when we engage young women in any field, focus on them, we not only increase the benefits on their own lives, but that of their family, and that ripple effect happens across their communities. Today's convening is just the start of a conversation on the importance and I think the magnitude of increasing young women in technology, and in particular increasing young women of color in technology, can have, not just in their lives and in their community, but just think the tech field in general. Today's convening is one of three. So we will also be hosting convenings in Bay Area, San Francisco, which sounds obvious, right? It kind of makes sense. But interestingly enough, we're also hosting another convening, I believe, closer to Q3, Q4 in 2019 in St. Louis, Missouri, which I think is great because the Midwest has burgeoning opportunities for young people, and they're certainly developing a tech sector in the St. Louis area. All three of these convenings will conclude with a white paper that details the findings from the convenings and also what's happening in the classroom. We're really focused, in particular where Pathways is concerned and where this grant or investment is concerned, on also focusing on young people from low to moderate income communities. So is the focus on women, young women of color, youth, 16 to 24 who are LMI, and tech sector. It's a really interesting combination and one we don't often talk about, but there's so much opportunity. And there's an opportunity to really focus and drive not just the conversation, but hopefully to increase participation in this particular sector. So what do we hope to get out of today's convening? I don't know about you, but after we're done, I'm going to be a little hungry. And it's going to be great to have lunch and to have coffee and tea. And it's great to meet new friends. And as we would say in Girl Scouts, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. That old adage is from a long time ago. I don't even know if the Girl Scouts are still saying it, but it's great to meet new people, and it's great to see folks you've known in the past. But it's really important that we take from today's convening and take action. So all I'm saying is it's great to conversate and get together and meet and gather. That's really important, but it's what we do after that's going to be equally, if not more important. So we hope to achieve in today's convening to have an open conversation on the barriers that young women of color face and experience even before entering the tech sector. But then also after you've secured that employment or that job, what happens after? So we've got some great experience on the panel. Our panelists will give you a real-world perspective on the obstacles they face and what they, as women of color, face in a burgeoning field of IT, which would be a really interesting and dynamic conversation, I think. They will also discuss, so it's one thing to discuss what's preventing or what are some of the barriers. We're also going to discuss what are some of the opportunities to take and diversify the field of technology and how each of us in this room can play a role. So as you listen and absorb and engage with our panelists, thoughts are going through your heads, you're thinking of dynamic ways in terms of how to engage young people and increase diversity. I'm going to ask you to think about one action you can take at the end of today's gathering. Usually I ask for 10 or 5 or 3 things. I like odd numbers as well, 3 things. But I'm just going to ask you to do one. Think of one thing that you can think about while you're here that will inspire you to take action when you leave. Now, we're on Instagram Live, so you may want to text or I don't even know what folks do, text or email your colleagues and say, you're not able to join me, but you can watch this on social media. When you get back to your office, you could say, you know what, I was so inspired. I want to figure out at my place of employment, how can we hire just 5, 10 more young men and women or young women in technology? Or I may want to support NPower. How can we do that? How can we partner with NPower or other organizations that are serving young women? It's one action. And if you think about it, we were all one action away from sitting here. It took one click to send the email out to invite you. Often we're always one click, one text, one conversation, one moment away from any opportunity in our lives, and that's how we're all here. It was one simple action. So I'm asking you to think of what is that one simple action that you all can take and be proactive to increase and have a ripple effect of what's happening in today's conversation. So to help you get to that one action, I'd like to introduce you to today's moderator, Kim Davis. She's sitting at my far right. There she is. Kim is the Executive Vice President for the National Hockey League, where she reinforces the notion that women can diversify any place. Prior to joining the NHL, Kim spent 5 years as the head of CSR and inclusive leadership practice at Teneo, a global advisory firm. And Kim previously held senior roles at J.P. Morgan Chase, including 7 years overseeing their global philanthropy at the foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Kim Davis.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, you guys can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. All right, that sounds a lot better. Thank you, Tia. That was a great introduction and a wonderful context set for this morning. And special thanks to the Citi Foundation for your leadership and your commitment to tackling what I think we know is one of the most important issues of our time, and one that we need to have much more authentic dialogue and conversation about. It's interesting, I was in Atlanta last week with the National Association of African American Insurance Executives, and they were talking about the lack of diversity in the insurance sector, in the insurance industry. And of course, I've recently joined an industry, the sports industry, and specifically the National Hockey League, where there is clearly a need for more diversity. And we're changing that quickly, I can promise you. But just last week in Atlanta, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, who is the president of Spelman College, many of you know is a historically black college for women, hosted an in-depth conversation with Priscilla Chan Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg's partner, and the co-founder of their tech initiative, talking about the need for more women of color and more women in the space of technology. So our conversation this morning is a timely one, and one that I know is going to be of great interest. We know the data. We know that the uphill climb for women, and particularly women of color in the field of technology, is well documented. But what we want to talk about this morning is what I refer to as the triple threat, that intersection of gender, race, and ethnicity that women of color face. And there are some unique challenges that come with that these women here this morning have experienced, are going to talk about in a very open and authentic way. This is going to be an authentic, honest conversation. It may be uncomfortable at moments, but it's something that we hope and expect that after we leave here, it will encourage you, it will inspire you to want to take action and to go back to your respective companies and organizations and do something different tomorrow. So that is what this conversation is going to be about. That's how we are going to conduct it. And we've got an incredible lineup of women who have broken through barriers, who are breaking through barriers, who are leaders to lead the discussion. So I'm going to begin by introducing the panelists, and let me say that their full bios are hugely impressive, and I'm not going to go through their full bios, but you can go to the NPower website and see their comprehensive bios. I will introduce each one of them in the order that they are sitting to me on the left, and then ask each one of them for just a quick moment to share a little bit about their connection to today's topic. I'm going to start with my left with Karen McCarthy. Karen is a social justice-oriented developer, an educator that works today as an experienced manager at Google Code Next, a program which is designed to cultivate the next generation of Black and Latinx tech leaders. Next is Damaris Garcia Schneider. Damaris is a champion of workplace diversity and inclusion initiative. She has worked at Deloitte for over 20 years and is currently a managing director in Deloitte Information Technology Services, and she also serves as the ITS Chief Inclusion Leader. Regina Dombowski is a graduate of the NPower New York program and has worked at Citi for almost 7 years. Regina is a VP and intelligence analyst in Citi's Cyber Intelligence Center. Rochelle Ancrafosu is an IT management executive at Broadridge Financial, where she looks at emerging technologies to drive better and faster business. She has also been very active in service to her community, mainly through mentorship and financial literacy. And last but certainly not least, to my far left is Viola Maxwell Thompson, who is a woman in this room who probably needs little introduction to this audience. She is president and CEO of IT Senior Management Forum, a national organization committed to increasing representation of Black professionals in tech. Please give each of these panelists a round. So starting with Karen and going down, I'm going to ask you guys for that quick one moment to just talk a little bit about why you're here and what your connection to this topic is.
Thank you, Kim, and I'm very excited to be here. So my pathway into technology was quite haphazard. I was a participant of a program fairly similar to NPower and CodeNext, which I currently work at, but one element that was missing was any connection to tech. So when I stepped into the field, I started as an educator and then ended up as a software developer and stepped into a field realizing that regardless of the work that's being done right now, so much remains to be done. Due to that, I came back to CodeNext and really dedicated to spending my time preparing young women of color to step into this field and feel empowered to start making the change themselves as well, because the more of us that are making this change, the faster it will happen.
Fantastic.
Great. I'm here because we do have a problem, right? And the problem is, if you look at organizations, we don't have the diversity numbers that we're looking for. And particularly if you think about Latinos, the way that we're growing, and when you look in the workplace, and specifically in IT, it's even less than African Americans. Yes. So I'm hoping that through my advocacy, my inspiration, I'm going to be able to make a difference. I'm very excited. I'll talk a little bit more about my career later on through some of the questionings that we're going to have. But when I got here this morning, I'm like, this is my hometown. I'm excited to be here. I used to live in McCombs Road, 170th Street in Jerome. I live in Florida now, but I travel a lot to Tennessee because that's where our back office facilities are. But I'm excited to be here, and I'm hoping that a lot of my journeys in life, specifically because I started in New York in my education, my career, I'm able to give you some tips and some inspire you to help you carry you forward to technology fields and to help us make a difference.
Fantastic. Virginia.
Hello. So for me, issues like women's advancement and also just fair work practices and things of that nature have always been a passion of mine. I see myself as the product of the American dream. My mother's family came from Mexico and my father's family came from Poland. And so it's really important to me to give back to others so that they might have the same opportunities that my parents afforded to me.
I'm humbled just to be here and look at the faces of the young ladies in the room and just see the innocence and the expectation and the ability to be able to just be that expectation for them. I come from humble backgrounds, born and raised in Liberia, West Africa, Monrovia, little house, ran around town, never even imagining that I'd be here today. But just happy to be able to have the opportunity to be that person that you can look to and say, I can do that. And it's not as difficult as they make it seem. And I'll try to tell you some of the secrets. So from that perspective, I just want to be able to help young women break barriers and understand that you have everything within you to be able to do that, and you just have to surface it. So here's the secret telling.
So I am also a native New Yorker, born and raised in Brooklyn. And prior to the role that I have today, which is leading the premier organization of IT professionals who happen to be Black, I spent 25 years in corporate America. Most of that was in IT. So started out programming in assembler, and I know many of you don't even know what that is, working in the financial services industry, and retired my corporate career as a partner with Ernst & Young. And so to be able to share with you that journey today, the ups, the downs, the good and the bad, is why I'm here. In addition to the fact that my college roommate, Kim Mitchell, is an executive with NPower. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, you can already see, as promised, we've got some incredible, experienced, and fearless leaders that are going to share their experiences. So before you can come up with solutions, you have to understand what problem you're trying to solve, right? And so I want to begin by framing the first question around the problem to solve. We know what the stats are in the technology field. We also know that the technology field is experiencing exponential growth. And so the opportunities that exist are really mind-boggling. There's a number that's out there that says that men right now outnumber women 7-3 in tech jobs. But more troubling to me than that is a statistic that I heard quoted by the not-for-profit Girls Who Code, which notes that in middle school, listen to this, in middle school, something like 74 to 75% of girls express interest in science, in engineering, in computer science, and in math. But by the time they get to age 18, less than 0.4% of those young women actually pursue those fields. Now that to me is hugely troubling. All of these women obviously broke through that barrier, and so I'm interested to understand from them, first of all, what's going on here? How do we go from 74% to less than 1% in a matter of 10 years? What is it about our environments in school that lead to this kind of outcome? I'll open it up to whoever wants to respond to that.
I would say that I would also even say it's not just the environment in the schools, but I also believe it happens in the professional world. We bring people in, we recruit them, and then we don't continue mentoring and following up. So to be intentional about not just getting students interested or hiring somebody, but how do you position that person for success? How do you make sure that you follow up? How do you ensure that you can possibly get the mentors that will help them navigate through some of the unconscious biases that exist, right? So really helping individuals not just start the journey, but help coach them and follow them through the journey until they can possibly fly and then start mentoring others. I see that problem even in corporate, is that we want to have our diversity numbers up, right? We want to introduce kids to technology. We get them engaged, but then that follow through, that commitment, that accountability to ensure that somebody actually makes it needs to be there.
But taking that follow-up and that accountability back a few years and asking you guys to think for a moment about yourselves as your younger selves. What messages did you receive, both positive and negative, that supported your desire to be in a technology field or in a technical field? And what can we share with people today who are either parents now or will be parents that will help them understand about the messages, the early messages, and what that means to the outcomes that people have?
So I'll tell you a little story. I have a niece who is 14. And I make sure that we spend time together, maybe once a month or so. She comes over and I have her actually shadow me. I brought her to work last month. And it was important for me to do that because she's extremely gifted in math and sciences. And she wants to be an anesthesiologist, if I can say that correctly. And when I found that out, I realized right away that it was important to make sure she understood what that looked like. And so I made a point of bringing her into work with me one day, and I had her actually go to meetings with me. And I had her interact with people who were coming to meet me and see me in that setting. And so she walked away saying, okay, I can sit in a corporate boardroom, or I can do whatever difficult thing that is. And then we had conversations about, well, what are the challenges you're seeing in school right now? And she was able to communicate the fact that she didn't see a lot of girls doing that.
Yes.
And so the next step was, okay, how can I get her hooked up with not a girls can code, but something in the sciences field that allows her to be networked into that. And I think it's on us as corporations, as people, as mentors, to do more of that, to have those simple conversations when we're driving in the car and say, what do you really want to do? What are the challenges? And take a little bit of our time as mentors, especially so, to identify who that person is in your life or in your community that you can just take in for a day. My I have a cousin just tells me all the time, I took her one day to NICE when I worked there. She remembers that forever. And it's made a huge difference. So on a personal level, at an individual level, at a mentorship level, that's critical, I think, at that stage.
And I was just going to share, so my father is an immigrant was an immigrant from Jamaica, West Indies. He finished 6th grade. He was a factory worker. My mother graduated from high school. I had this desire to tinker with things. And so my dad used to take me and we'd work on the TVs. This is back in the day when there were tubes in the back of the TV and they had to be changed. And I just so enjoyed it. And he would say to me, you should go into business. You should go into business. He didn't know exactly what to tell me or what direction to lead me to. But my mom, on the other hand, was saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that. Don't go that route, you just go do something different, right? This is no disparaging comment at all, but her thought was become a teacher, right? And so I did not follow my passion around technology because there wasn't anyone to tell me what to do and how to get there and how to achieve in that area. And it wasn't until later in life, quite honestly, when I was tinkering with a machine, working in the financial services industry at a bank, and the machine kept breaking down all the time, and I would get frustrated because we have to wait until the programmer came and fixed it. And so one day I said to him, would you just show me what you're doing so I can fix it myself? And that's what he did, and the propensity for technology was it just blossomed. And so at that point then I went through a learning program where I learned how to code, and then the rest is history. But I think the challenge is the parents need to understand the opportunities as much as the individuals. We need to have forums like this that include parents so that they can see the women who look like them, who have had successful careers, who can help their child navigate those channels and be successful in this industry as well. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not. But you can have perseverance, you can have the right network, you can have role models, and you can achieve high success in this industry.
I think that also one of the things, and this was a true sort of experience that I had in our Tennessee office, there was a group of young kids, I think they were freshmen from high school, and one of my peers was talking about technology. And he was only mostly focused on one component. He's an architecture, so I'm sure he was talking about development. And it was interesting because when I went by, they were underrepresented minorities, and you can tell that they were not engaged, right? So how do you engage them, right? And for me, I did not grow up in technology. And what was very interesting when I went into that room, it was they weren't gravitating to the architectural world. And I think also educating people on the different facets of technology, because technology is a scary word. It is scary. It is getting scarier, right? Artificial intelligence, robotics, and all that stuff, right? And so when you think about technology, and this is where I feel comfortable, and I'll give you a little bit of story, how I got into technology. You have coders, right? You have creative designers, you have user experience, you have documentation, you have relationship management, data science. So at your age, I think it's important to understand, not get intimidated by the word technology, and understand the different facets and the different roles. And where does your passion link, right? And you may be a creative person. You're like, wow, I want to go into design the user experience or designing the application or the mobile. And for me, I find that is one of the things that I have experienced of why women get really intimidated by the big word technology. And how do we break it down to the different facets that's going to attract your passion and where you want to go?
There's one additional thing that I want to point out that I just give that a second.
I can stay away.
Wait. Okay.
You fixed it.
That you started to point out, which is that I think visibility is so key. So pointing out to young girls what their strengths are and giving them opportunities to see that in other people. And that applies to mentors and professionals, but it applies to media as well.
Yeah.
so much of kids' time nowadays is spent on media and seeing what is there. And even if there's people encouraging them to see individuals, it's important for them to have those people in their lives, but it's also important for them to see it in everything that they experience every day. So I love this movie, but Hidden Figures, like I remember that coming out, the impact that that had on my nieces. And one of them that was very, very into science, but wasn't being encouraged in her school, and myself and my sister, her mom, tried our hardest. But having that, seeing that in mass media and having that as something in the collective consciousness with her peers really helped make her feel empowered.
That's a really, really important point. Regina, you actually came through the NPower program. So I'm curious to hear, as we've talked about the different barriers and the opportunities, what that experience was like and what takeaways came for you that have informed your career.
Sure. So I actually see NPower as my second chance because I was one of the women's statistics that you spoke about. I loved solving problems. I liked figuring out how things worked. I made A's in my calculus class, tested out of all of my freshman math requirements, and I still thought I wasn't good enough to go into a STEM career. So that was, reflecting back, that's something that I regret not being brave enough and taking a risk and doing something that I was passionate about because I was scared because I didn't understand exactly what it entailed, because a lot of like what you all were saying is I didn't have that conceptual understanding of what it looked like to have a career in that field. It was, you can be a teacher, you can be a lawyer, these like very vague ideas of what a career should be. And so I did. I studied political science because I was going to be a lawyer. And so I really saw NPower as that second chance to conquer my fears. I also felt like I was very fortunate because the instructor that I had, she was a female instructor, and she served as a role model to see like, wow, she's really amazing. She knows what she's talking about. I see men respecting her. She really like showed me that that was actually a viable career option. So I'm extremely appreciative for NPower because I would not be in the career today if it was not for the program.
I had the opportunity to go to a blog, a tech blog for women of color, and read some of the commentary that the women bloggers talked about, primarily young millennials, talking about the experiences that they are having in their various fields. And there were two that really stood out for me that I wanted to share and ask the panelists to respond to, because I think it informs much of what we're talking about. So the first one, and I quote, she said, "My field is still populated with mostly white dudes, obviously, so erasure is a continuing factor. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who looks like me profiled in most design publications and websites, or even speaking at most design and tech conferences, unless, of course, the panel is specifically about diversity. Go figure. And it's not because qualified designers and developers of color don't exist. ... React to that."
I was interviewed about this once, and I think that it's a dual-edged sword. And by that I mean, being raised as a young African girl, I was not raised to have an affinity to go over to a white guy and find something in common. Yes. Bottom line, right?
This is the authentic conversation.
Right. I just wasn't. I was even taught not to look people in the eye because it was disrespectful. But in corporate America, if you don't look people in the eye, they think you're shady. Right. So, I had to really grow in that respect. And honestly, to be able to just develop connections based on people being human and having shared experiences goes a long way, and is something that we really have to teach our young girls and our young women to be comfortable doing. Yes. So that's one part of it. The other is that there is no question that we don't see ourselves on those podium on the podium. We don't see ourselves in the magazines. We don't see ourselves and can't relate, or see ourselves being there because we're not there. And so what companies need to do, what schools need to do, what parents need to do is to start to think about how do we change that from when a child is 10, 11 years old, as we went back to, because that's really where it starts. Yeah. And when I went to college, even coming out of college and being hired into my first job, I went in with a degree not as technical as a majority of the people who went there. A lot of those people are not as technical as I am right now. Yes. But they hired based on my ability to learn and how quickly I could learn. And so we need to be able to impress upon our young women that even if you aren't in a position where you are placed out of calculus, that does not mean that you can't be a top technologist, right? And it's more about the mentoring process, right? And it's more about really being able to place people at the right places. So one is we need to get over our fear of really stepping out and learning about some white people, because they are cool too, right? And two, really being able to say, let's step out of our comfort zone ourselves and within our communities.
Another reason I think is you often hear people say, well, I don't know where to find them. Yeah. Right. We're here. That's part of the reason why ITSMF was created. So we're, like I said, an organization of senior level executives in the technology industry. We are having a voice in this industry. We have members who are Chief Information Security Officer for the NFL, as an example, right? Former CIO for Procter & Gamble. These are all Black men and women who are educated and knowledgeable in this field. And so we're working with organizations like Gartner, if you're familiar with them. They have a conference every year, thousands of people in attendance, not often very diverse in their speakers, but we have, for the last 7 years, had 2 ITSMF members and 2 high-tech members. High-tech is a sister organization to ITSMF that's focused on the Hispanic community, who are CIOs, who sit on the stage and talk about their journey to the C-suite in front of an audience of thousands. Things like that will change those opportunities. We have to be known that we're there, and that's what we're working to do, kind of raise the awareness that there are senior level executives who are Black, who can be dynamic speakers. Larry Quinlan, the global CIO for Deloitte, is often sought after as a speaker in this industry. He's a Black man from St. Kitts, but knowledgeable beyond belief on various different technology topics. So that's what I think needs to happen. And we need to promote that these individuals are doing that. That's the other piece, the marketing component.
I think that, so I'm taking it, I'm going to put my inclusion hat. I think that we need to be very intentional about it from an organization. So I have the honors that when we're going to conferences and conventions to handpick who's going to attend. And so I am very intentional to ensure that we have a diverse candidate. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to send all the African Americans to NSBE, or, for example, we were just at Alpha. We did a technology challenge. It was important to me that I had underrepresented minorities. So, Doug and Mike, they were both there. They're African American peers of mine. But I also was intentional about ensuring that I also had Hispanics and also our white cohorts. So I would have hold companies accountable of being intentional to making those assignments and not just default to, Susie Q, XYZ is good, because sometimes people just lean to that white person that normally does it, challenge the status quo. But then there's something else, and I'm not sure, and this is more related to the women. I don't know, how many women have heard of the book Ask For It? I suggest that every young woman reads it, because women in general, and especially Latinas, and I'm not sure about African Americans, we don't ask for things. We're just grateful and we're blessed for what we have. I remember one time, men would ask for things, right? They would ask for opportunities. They would ask for raises. And I remember one time I was, I'm sure it was within my Deloitte tenure, and I was complaining, abuelita, ta, 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 ta. And my grandmother, she was a factory worker in Inwood Avenue making albums. Those don't even exist anymore with the Lionel thing. She's like, just be grateful and blessed that you have a job, right? And so we have this culture of us that says, be grateful and we're blessed. I am, abuelita, but but on the same token, I need to push the envelope because if not, the other cohorts are going to exceed me, and I'm going to stay behind, right? So I really recommend. I actually got 2 audio versions of that book. I actually taught at an alpha event. Asked for it, and it's just really amazing. It talks to you, even gives you an example about a woman not negotiating her starting salary, and a man asking for more, and the difference of a $5,000 of how that can compound over time. You're like, wow, just because I didn't ask for that raise, you're already giving that extra parity to men.
One of my early mentors, who happened to be a white male, said to me, and I will never forget it, he said, guys come in here and they have done 10% of the job, and they already ask for a raise. Said women come in and they've accomplished 90%, and they're talking about how they have to complete the 10 before they ask for a raise. So culture and ethnicity and race and all of those intersections do matter. And understanding them doesn't mean that you judge them. It means that you understand them so that you can better respond to them. So I think those comments are great. I want to explore any generational differences. I think we should face that down.
So I wasn't exactly going to take this generational, but I was going to talk about the difference between, like you were giving me the example of I think a CIO that is well sought after. But in the specific example, I think it was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
So thinking about graphic designers or junior software developers and those folks. So part of my background is when I actually started to become a software developer, I went to a software boot camp. So I spent 3 months intensive at a women-centric boot camp. One challenge of which was that at least 90% of my cohort were white women. And there was a very, very small number of Black, Latina, and Native women representation. But one thing that I noticed across the board from everyone, but particularly from us women of color, was that we weren't stepping up to talk in these spaces. There was definitely this sense of, how do I know that I'm good enough? I'm just starting, I can't speak to any of this, which I want to challenge for everybody. Like you can speak to it, and it being both your experience in the field and any expertise that you have, you can absolutely do that and should ask for those opportunities. And as much as it should not be on us to have to ask and seek these things out, people do have the tendency to just go with John Doe that's come to the talk before. So if you want to be considered, you have to put yourself out there. And then I would say on top of that, once you've done it and you've made those connections, open the doors, bring other people with you, and get more people connected.
That's so interesting because there, and I don't know generationally if this is something that you still hear, but there's this old adage, do I need to act like a man to be in the tech field? But what does that even mean? I mean, I know what it meant in 1980 when I started my career, because we used to have little suits on and little bow ties like we were little men. I couldn't wait to break out of that and put on pink pumps and orange suits.
Thank you.
But anyway, that's a conversation for another panel. But I'm curious, what has your experience been with this notion in tech of you're breaking down that idea that you have to act like a man?
It's a great one. I was on Wall Street for a long time, 17 years in technology. So I wore pinstripe suits and white shirts, for quite a bit. And I love pink, so happy to have broken out of that. But I think that when I started, I did feel it was important to come to meetings and look as masculine as possible. Speak as little as possible for fear of being misunderstood or just whatever it was. But I think over time, I was saying to you, there was a lady who I actually worked for at my first job at Accenture for very short time. And she was fearless. Back in 1996, she wore very long hair, all dresses, walked in there and smashed it every day because she was really, really smart. She did her homework. She taught me how to do my homework. And I forgot that for a while because I thought it was more important to just fit in from how I looked and how I spoke and just being compliant, as opposed to just sometimes saying, no, I actually know this better than you. And so you're gonna need to give me a moment so that I can explain it, and because people would tend to talk over you, and then say, now that we are at the same place, let's go make this decision that I'm pretty sure is the right way to go. But it took some time to get to that. It took a level of comfort, it took a level of confidence. I'm happy today that every time I go out, I love wearing dresses more than I love wearing suits, pantsuits. And so I think we bring something different to the table. And we have to acknowledge that and accept that and be comfortable with that. I mean, like, do guys in the boardroom really, with another woman, want to see another pinstripe suit? Probably not. We bring something different to the table. We bring who we are as women, and we bring our mindsets, our brains. We've studied, we've done our homework, and we know our stuff on top of that. But we have to first be comfortable with that and say it's okay and not remove ourselves from the equation because of that. And then after that, I think it flows a lot better, and you have to see other people do it and say it's okay.
I agree. Regina, what did you learn from NPower? What did you learn from the NPower experience that informed some of this for you?
Sure. So, I mean, I think some of the advice that we got in the program, it was obviously to err more on the professional side, because what you don't want to do is to give somebody a reason that's not a real reason to say no to you. And I've kind of embodied that throughout my career. But what I really think is important is really understanding the dynamics and the culture of the organization that you work in. So because technology does tend to be heavy male, they skew what the cultural norms are. If it were perhaps another organization that was heavily female, men would have to learn how to adapt their behaviors to be in a predominantly female organization. So being in technology, I think it's important to understand, we have to be anthropologists really, understand what the behaviors are, understand which behaviors we're comfortable with adopting to continue to be authentic to ourselves, but to also be successful. So it's really about understanding the environment and understanding what you're comfortable with versus not comfortable with, what you can compromise on versus not, to get to where you want to be.
So I had a similar story, and I thought it was just related to New York. I just wore pantsuits, and maybe it's back in the day. And I remember when I moved to Miami, the women and the men would look at me like, you're not fitting in. So ever since then, I let my hair down and put on my dresses. And it was interesting. I was sharing with the colleagues here that my husband goes, why aren't you wearing a dress today? He goes, you know, you have pretty legs. And I'm like, you know, I don't know if it was New York that I just put on the slide. I don't know what it is. But one of the things that you said, it was really interesting that being Latina, I can show my passion very easily. And I remember we had a women's forum in our Hermitage office that we do once a year. And one of the women was saying, well, they stood up and somebody had asked a question. It's like, why are us women that when we are passionate that we're seen as emotional and whatnot? And I stepped up and I said, you shouldn't feel that way. And I actually, I think you were there, Mary Jane, and I actually said to him, I have a lot of senior partners here. I says, he could tell you last week I went into his office, my passionate and my authentic self, right? And I put him on a spot. And I think there is a balance of being your authentic self, your passion, being who you are as a woman, because we do bring different perspectives. Last week we had our partner director meeting in Vegas, and Kathy Engelberg, which is our CEO, she had a phenomenal, I'm just getting the chills right now, letter on like fast forward 2030, like how she sees the world. And I don't know, while I was sitting listening to that letter, I don't know if a man would have written it the same because we do bring different emotions to the workplace to add to diversity. So
Which is part of diversity, right?
absolutely,
This is all part of
absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. So let's open it up to questions. I'm sure you guys have even better questions than I do. So where do we want to start? Okay, well, I'll jump up.
My name is Danae. Thank
Stand
you.
up.
Hi,
so we
Danae.
can hear.
Hello, everyone. My
Hi.
name is Danae. And I wanted to ask, what were some of the challenges you first faced entering the field? Because I don't have a tech background, and I know what maybe some of the challenges that I faced.
So when I came in, as I said before, I did not come in with an engineering degree. And I was thrown into a boot camp and learned how to code on the spot. I see one of my Accenture classmates there who we didn't know. And one of the things we did was learn how to learn from other people. And so and that's such an important lesson in life because it's not just about coding or whatever it is you're doing. You have to learn how to learn from other people. You have to be comfortable with what you don't know, be honest with yourself about what that is, and then learn how to learn. So for example, if you're learning to build a website and you don't know how to maybe, pull the graphics in the right way, there's nothing wrong with asking and building your network and asking about how to go about doing that. Don't feel like you have to come with everything to the table. What you do need to know is, this is what I don't know and this is where I'm going to get it. Because that's what's going to carry you all through. And that's what our company originally hired for, I realized in retrospect, were people who were resourceful enough to know what they did not know and know where to find it and able to learn quickly. So if you got those three things, the rest is history. You'll learn what you need to know.
And also, I was just going to say, the other thing is have an inquisitive mind, right? And volunteer to do things that no one else wants to do.
Right.
Because that puts you in a position to learn even more. And it also makes people aware of who you are. And then they want to give you more opportunities. That's what I did in the beginning of my career.
For me, I didn't come of technology. I came through different routes, but I think the biggest challenge to get into the field is probably yourself. You need to have that confidence and that mindset. And I remember when I got into, I got into technology more because I knew business process and I was leading business organization and I knew technology to enable it. I had this big SAP implementation across the 10 islands in the Caribbean, which was like my best job ever. Just island hopping, implementing SAP. So anyway, so I come to back, I was in Secom and I came back to the US and Larry helped me get back into the US. So the first gig that I got was great. It was Adobe Analytics, looking to analytics, it was great. All of a sudden, I was asked to take on a delivery department. Okay, I didn't know Agile from hole in the wall, seriously. I'm exaggerating, but still. But it's like, oh, I was like, and mind you, I was already with the firm 19 years. I felt so insecure that I could not do my job and that I was not going to be effective. So I was my biggest enemy. Luckily for me, I had supporters that knew I could do it, and they challenged me, and you learn. And now I lead a software delivery department that has over 70 people between here and in the USI, and I feel good about it. But I will tell you, I was chicken, I was scared. And so just your mindset and just putting yourself in there is, to me, is one of the key barriers to help you get into the field. Be confident that you can do it, as well as the tips that these ladies provided.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. When I stepped into my first software developer role, my imposter syndrome was strong. I'm going to be entirely candid. It was strong. But I had peers around me and I had mentors around me that reminded me, you will learn everything in due time.
Yeah.
And I understood the culture of my company, which was essentially you needed to seem confident in order to get more opportunities, in order for them to trust you. So while in my head I was thinking whatever I was thinking and trying really hard not to, I tried my best to exude this confident humility that I know I need to learn a lot, but I also know that I've got this. And that allowed me to really progress.
Big secret.
I think it's also important to I think they say this often, build like a board of directors for yourself. So finding people who are even peers, like I have individuals in the organization where if something happens, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I can bounce it off of them and they can be like, no, Regina, that's normal. Keep going, you can do this. So building a group of people above you, below you, around you that can continue to help support you and be that sanity check if you are having any sort of self-doubt.
So this is an example of, I don't know if this is on yet, artificial intelligence. So I'm Kim also. The other one had to step away secretly. So we are going to open it up for questions, but I have one more for the panel. And I heard someone say, as you were introducing yourselves, that we were going to share secrets.
Yes.
What's your secret?
Well, I'll tell you that the biggest secret for me has been sponsorship. And I come from an African background, so we really believe in the village. And I really do believe that that village carries you all the way to wherever you go. And the current company that I am at, Broadridge, the main reason I chose the job was because of a man, John Hogan, who said, I will be your executive sponsor. And I realized how critical that was, having gone through my previous job for 17 years and getting to a point where I felt like I had broken every possible barrier, but I was missing a sponsor. And you can never overestimate yourself to the degree that you don't understand how important it is to have a sponsor. And you cannot be afraid to seek out that sponsor. Because at my first job, I chased him down. And his name was Wayne, and I chased him down, and I said, I want to be on your project. Please put me on your project. And I waited for 3 months and kept hounding him until he got me onto his project. Now where I am at my current company, Broadridge, I'm doing technology strategy for AI, robotics, machine learning, you name it. And if John Hogan had not called me on the phone and said to me, I will be your executive sponsor, and whatever it is that you don't know to figure out here, I will help you through that, I probably wouldn't have gone that route, because that was actually the most critical thing for me. And always seek sponsors, seek people who can be in your corner and point you in the right direction, because I really do believe in the village.
So I have three. One is perseverance. I told you guys that I lived in the Bronx, and we went bankrupt, and we were on welfare. My mom left my dad, so I had a really tough childhood. And but I persevered. I was not going to be one of those numbers. I was going to be one of those girls pregnant and on the welfare line. So I persevered, and I started looking for organizations that were going to help me get to my next level. And so the first organization I went to was, I don't think the bank exists anymore, it's probably Chase now. It was Manufacturers Hanover Bank. I couldn't afford to put myself through college, so I looked for an organization that would pay for my school. So I would work during the daytime, and at nighttime I would go to school. But I had that perseverance, like I am getting out of this hole. I am not staying, and it ain't happening. People, I remember when I first came to the United States, because I was born in Puerto Rico, like they stereotype Dominicans, because I'm half Dominican, Dominicans as drug dealers, Puerto Ricans as welfare, and I'm like, that is not me. Right. So I persevered. The next thing is really around sponsorship. I was lucky. I found, and happened to be a white man from Vermont that saw the potential in me. And he pushed me, and he took risk in me. So that to me was day one, Deloitte, I got that. And he's still my best friend and my mentor. So that would be. The last thing is that I really feel that if an organization looks cool and attractive, make sure that culture and their values align with yours. You do not want to sacrifice anything. I'm blessed, gonna be married 25 years. I have 3 adult sons. One of them works for Amazon, 2 of them are Florida State. And I've been working with an organization that has allowed me to be able to have a family family first, and they respect my values. And to me, that is key. Something can be cool and sexy, but if it does not align with your personal values, don't do it.
I think the secret sauce for me when I was in corporate was ITSMF, quite honestly, because it was an organization of people that I could go to and have real, candid conversations about what it's like to be a partner in a firm that was predominantly white male. I was the first African-American female partner in the management consulting practice in 1997. I mean, that is amazing, right? Thank you. And so, you know, having this situation being presented to me, this opportunity being presented to me was amazing, but at the same time, it was frightening. And by being connected with ITSMF, they helped me understand 3 things. And these 3 things actually come from a book called Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed, written by Harvey Coleman. And what he talks about in that book is that at early points in your career, performance is important, right? You have to perform or you don't even have the opportunity to play in the game. Right. As you advance in your career, image and exposure become even more important. Do the leaders in your company know who you are and what you've done and what you're capable of doing? And are you dressing the part of the role that you want, not the role that you have today? And so understanding those components as I continued to kind of navigate through my career was the success factor for me. And now, sitting in this role with ITSMF, it's important for me to make sure that we are giving those same opportunities to people like you, right? That we are creating mentors for you, sponsors for you, that we're doing leadership development training so that you can understand who you are at your authentic self. We have a specific program called Emerge for women of color in the technology industry. Why? I told you that I spent 25 years in IT. How come I'm not in it now? When I left the firm, I had no desire to stay in the industry. We have to fix that, because if we don't fix that retention piece, we won't see the numbers increase. Right. And so that's my aha moment.
I feel like we're going basically the same order all the time. It's very predictable. All right, so I really have 2. One is to really understand your true north and your values. So when you're making career decisions, even if it's not directly towards your true north, you know which way you're going. That you're not going to get lost along a path that you don't actually want to be on without being able to get yourself back. Divergence is fine, but have that sense of your pathway. And then as second, if an opportunity arises that follows your values and follows your true north, say yes. Like if there's that little voice in the back of your mind that says, I don't know that I can do this, say yes. You can do it, you'll figure it out. That's a piece of wisdom that my grandmother gave me. She was a single mom for her entire life, and that's how she managed to keep pushing forward and to instill in her sons a sense of persistence and independence. So always say yes.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. One of the things that I've tried to do in my career is continuously raise my hand. And in raising my hand and volunteering for things, it's connected to me to so many different people who have opened up different opportunities. Like had I not raised my hand and said I'm interested in looking for a job in a nonprofit, my supervisor wouldn't have said, well, we don't have a job for you here, but maybe you can train in technology. And I found NPower that way. And then from NPower, just been continuous pivots by meeting interesting people who have helped me find the path that I'm on. So the relationships and saying yes and raising your hand, even though it might be scary, you meet incredible people along the way.
So, other questions?
Hi, I'm May. I'm with NPower. I'm an alumni and a TA for Jersey City. What advice can you give to girls to handle social stigmas within the IT field? Have you ever have a short story of running into conflict for your gender, your ethnicity, or both?
Probably my favorite or most typical experience that I've had is I say something in a meeting it gets ignored. 5 minutes later, somebody else says it. And like, what do you do? And this is something that also definitely depends on like what is the company culture, understanding your team. Like Bertina said, like you have to be an anthropologist, you have to be a sociologist. But I was at a talk a little while ago, and a speaker there suggested something that I actually plan to use in the future, which is basically when they say it to say, oh, like I'm so glad you agreed with what I said a few minutes ago. So how do we start to plan to actually take action? Like immediately shift it, just call it out that this is something that you had said, and then make it a team effort immediately. Because you want to seem independent, thoughtful, but still like a team player. So figure out ways that you can automatically take and shift that narrative yourself.
It's okay. Hi, my name is Chantel, and my question is also what the biggest obstacles you guys went through, but you already answered that. My next question is social media, like presenting ourselves. Do we have personal pages or tech-related pages, or do we merge them? Just wanted to get your perspective on that. Thank you.
So, I'll tell you my honest opinion. I don't have a lot of social media pages. I have LinkedIn. I actually just started an Instagram one literally a month ago. That's about it. And there's a reason. I did data for a long time, and I understand how data works, and I understand how much people can piece together about a person with their data. And you have to understand that your data is really precious. You don't realize it, but it is. And you need to be careful about what kind of images you're putting out there about yourself. And I feel I tell my sons this all the time. If you want to run for president one day, be careful about what you're putting on today. Seriously.
Nobody's going to run for president.
Yeah.
On the Supreme Court.
And on the Supreme Court. Exactly. And it's not because we don't all get to have fun and be teenagers and be young people, but you have to understand the importance of privacy and the image that you really want to present. So what I would say is, if you're looking to really do stuff career-wise, I would be careful about A, what you're putting out socially in general. B, I would use my LinkedIn or whatever the other ones may be in a way that allows you to start to build a network. Because the current job that I have, I actually found through LinkedIn from a guy who sat across from me in church, honestly. So I went in and I looked it up, I saw it, it came up and it said, oh, this guy who's in your network works here, Mike Hopkins. And I went to him and said, hey, I didn't know you're here. And he said yes, and he was a part of my referral process. So I didn't go through any, and then it just went from there. So it is an important tool. It didn't go through an executive recruitment search firm to find me. So it's a critical point, it's an important point, but it's also to be managed by you. And be very careful about managing that, because you can't pull it back once it's gone. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I have a LinkedIn account as well. I use that for sharing information about the industry. So writing articles about diversity and inclusion, being a woman in the tech industry. And I always suggest to people, if you don't want to read it on the front page of the New York Times, don't write it, right? Because that's exactly where it could appear. So be very, very diligent about what you put out there.
Next question. Hi, I'm Tracy from the National Urban League. Can we really talk about women supporting women in the industry? Studies have talked about women are disincentivized to hire other women, and particularly talked about white women are most likely to benefit from gender promoting programs, but they're least likely to support other women of color in this sector. That was really a question.
Well, so I think Citi actually does a really great job of women supporting women. We have women's councils, and I actually run the logistics for one of our development programs it's for VP women at the cusp of becoming SVP. And the networks that come out of that program, I've been involved organizing for 3 years, actually qualify next year. but the women and the relationships that come out of it, it's incredible. I see the way that they network among each other, and I see the way that they recommend each other for jobs, and that's sort of the culture and the relationships that Citi is helping foster by supporting these programs. It makes me really proud to work at Citi.
I think that for me, and I actually see this quite often, is that the way we support each other, and this was a real example that happened recently, it was helping people see beyond their unconscious bias. I had a Latina that applied for a role, and she was very Latina, but she was damn technical, more technical than the guys. And I basically challenge, and there's one of the things that Deloitte is doing, we have 6 leadership traits, and one of them is having that courage to challenge the status quo. It's like, are you sure you're hiring the right person? Like, why are you passing this woman? Like, why can't you get past her accent? Like, she is way more technical than these guys. So it's really pushing the status quo and helping the decision makers look beyond that and see their biases and see the value that that person can bring to the organization. And I think that not just as women, but as women of color, we can also even help men that are facing those situations, because they exist. And we really need to push back for people to see beyond that and to see the professional.
So I'll shout out the 3 women who are here from Broadridge supporting me. And how much? Oh, there's support. So this, enough said. You know, I love the fact that Broadridge is great about that, because to be honest with you, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was pregnant with my second son, our company had just changed over to 3 months maternity leave. We had 1 week prior to that. For my first son, 1 week. So we had just changed over. It was happening in January. I was having him in November. I said to the HR lady, come on, I have enough sick time, vacation time. Can I just use that and then start the 3 months? She said, well, if you can hold the baby in for 1 more month, you'll be fine. This came from another woman, right? Now, I know, right? That was crazy, right? From another woman. But now, that became an important point for me to factor into a decision about the next place I chose to go to. And I can say unequivocally, having only been here not very long, that family values are important. And women are supporting women, as you can see. And that, you don't have to sacrifice.
Questions?
Hi, my name is Chris Lemoyne. I work as a development lead in markets tech for Citi. I had a question in regards to asking for it, the topic you were discussing earlier. There was a case with a friend that I know who was a woman of color in a STEM major, working as a professional for a number of years, who relocated from DC to New York City. And when she was applying for roles and opportunities, we continuously pushed her to ask for it and request a higher level of salary. And we found that many of the organizations, when she did ask, didn't respond. And she ended up having to settle for pay lower than she was making before in a probably higher cost of living environment. So I just wanted to see from the panel's perspective, what was your experience with asking for it? Have you seen a level of success when women of color ask for it in these STEM occupations? And is there any keys to doing it well or being more proficient at it?
Yeah, so I can tell you my story, although it's very dated. When I was at the firm, I have a daughter, and she was 10 at the time. And she was kind of struggling a little bit with math. And I was like, are you sure you're my child? Anyway. And you know, when you're working at the firm like that, you're easily putting in 60 hours a week, early in the morning, late at night. And I wasn't there for her to help her with her math and to give her that sense of security. And so I went to the firm and I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And have always been on the most visible projects because, back to my point earlier, right, I had to ask for them. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to leave. And they stepped back and they were like, oh my God, no, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to go to a job where I actually can have a more normal work life and have work life, at the time we called it work-life integration, right? Work-life balance. And they said to me, we need you. We need you on this project. We need you in this firm. You are one of the highest level black women in this company. What can we do to bridge this gap? And so I asked them to consider allowing me to work part-time. And they said, absolutely. We will reduce your hours at work and allow you to work part-time. And in addition to that, we won't reduce your salary. That was huge, right? And so of course I stayed. But you have to go in with the right story and the right confidence in yourself. I don't know all about that particular person's interview process and what it was like and what the culture was like and things like that. But you can absolutely ask for it. And then you have to be grounded in who you are for the answer to be no. And still know that it's not personal, it's a business decision. And just keep moving.
I mean, I want to echo exactly what you said at the end. I think that your storytelling, how you approach, your influencing is key. And where you're willing, I know I'm not a good negotiator, so there are certain things that I would probably go in there try to negotiate my salary. If I don't go in with that confidence, I'm going to lose, right? So you need to be prepared and well rehearsed with your talking points and whatever you're asking for to have a good solid case and do it with poiseness. And I guess like this a firmness, right? Like you mean business.
While I was studying my MBA, we actually did a specific negotiations course, and they talked about how women negotiate. And typically when we come to the table to negotiate, we've already settled walking in the door. Second, we haven't done our homework. So we don't know what our position commands. And we haven't mapped what that salary looks like relative to our skill set and what we bring to the table. And it's funny because I was talking to a young lady who I mentor who had talked to another mentor who said to her, oh, they gave you this amount of money. Don't ask for any more. You'll get them upset. So rule number one about negotiation is everybody walks away unhappy. That's a good negotiation. You're not happy, I'm not happy. That means we've actually met in the middle. So the goal is not to go in and say, I want to make them happy. Right. It's to say, this is what I'm valued at. These are my skill sets. And because we actually want to get married and like be together, we both have to sacrifice something. Right. And so you walk away with that as the way you walk away, right? And that's what's important. So I think as women, we have to understand what our skill set is worth, be comfortable and confident about that, and then go to the table understanding we may walk away a little unhappy, but if it's a really good relationship and you know that guy's gonna be a good guy, it's worth a sacrifice that he doesn't clean the bathroom, right? So from that perspective, seriously, and that's something that we need to do. We need to do our homework about what we're worth, what we're bringing to the table, and then come without as much emotion as possible and say, this is really what I'm worth, and then have the conversation, be prepared to both walk away unhappy, because then you've done your job.
I agree with everything that the lady said, and also want to speak to one point from the experience of a lot of my peers from the program that stepped into new software developer roles, had never applied for that kind of job before. That one thing that some people didn't do at first, besides doing their homework and understanding the playing field and what they brought to the table, was they were too quick to respond in an email about their salary expectations. Make it a conversation. Like, if at all possible, get a person sitting in front of you or on the phone to have a conversation about what are your expectations and why. Then it's a lot harder to just not respond or to be able to close out your case.
We have time, I'm so sorry, for one question. And someone has the mic.
Hello, my name is Naima. I'm from the NPower program located in Jersey City. And my question is, personal question, of course. Before entering your careers now, were any of you more informative or informative at all of the IT industry whatsoever, like down to like knowing how to work a phone, and if you weren't, let's see, what inspired you to continue your road to success?
I actually went to high school right up the street. Wait, I don't know. I went to fashion industries. I had no idea I didn't want to be a technologist. So I went to a competency high school. That was what I wanted to do. My grandmother back in the Dominican Republic made wedding dresses, and that's what I thought I was going to do. I then went into college and thought I was going to be an accountant. I ended up with a business degree, and that's how I got into Deloitte. And how I got introduced into technology is, in the business world, you need technology to enable it. And I just started teaching myself about technology and how technology was enabling it. So that was my journey to get into technology.
I think you had said something earlier too. Technology is so multifaceted that it's almost impossible to think what the role will be, because the roles today are not going to be the roles tomorrow. So it's really about getting into an organization where you appreciate their values, and then I find that you grow with the company. Like, I've switched jobs within Citi 4 times now in 7 years, different roles, different responsibilities, different content. So your career path is windy.
And the one thing is, it's important, is that though roles are evolving, one of the things that there is still a gap, and I would consider for you guys to continue developing, are soft skills. Soft skills are transferable everywhere, right? So there is kind of that, finding that balance of somebody that knows soft skills and technology. It's very hard, right? So technology keeps on changing, but if you keep on strengthening your soft skills, you're going to be in a good position to reinvent yourself. I've been in Deloitte over 23 years. I've reinvented myself 7 times.
And I was just going to say, that's one of the advantages of being in consulting as well, because there are different customers, there are different industries, there are different technologies, and so it's almost like a new job every time you're assigned to a new customer. So that's one of the things that I liked about that industry.
Yeah, I had no idea I would do technology. When I walked in the door at my first job, I still didn't really know I was doing technology. And I had a lot of more technical friends in college who ended up doing less technical things. I'm doing much more technical stuff. I think what inspires me is just staying fresh, staying current. I take my sons with me everywhere and teaching them, about technology and playing with them and having them be inspired through me. So, it's more about life being a journey and I go after the hardest things, right? And I say, I want to do that. And it happens to be technology a lot of the time from a career perspective. But just loving it too. It's fun. Changes a lot.
Yes.
Okay, so you now have a few minutes more to listen to us, but you also have time to network. So all of those questions, you're going to have to find your way, beeline to the panelists to get your question in. But I want to thank you for giving us what I learned in this movie, Concussion, that's called The Gift of Knowing. You have given us the gift of knowing your story, knowing the secrets, and knowing the things that have worked for you so that we can discover the knowing for ourselves. And who would have known that by the year of the flood, when we met each other, that we'd be sitting on the other side of each other in this panel. So the gift of knowing you has been tremendous. And soft skills, I would offer that they are power skills. They're not soft at all. And so technology and power go together really well. And I am going to ask for a woman of power to come and close us out, Bertina Ceccarelli, the CEO of NPower.
Thank you. And I also want to thank Kim for jumping in when Kim Davis needed to leave us a little bit early. Kim is our VP of Program Development Operations. I too want to thank our panelists for your courage, your wisdom, your truths, your humor, and your secrets. And there's a couple of themes that emerged out of the panel that really resonated with me that I just want to highlight for a moment. And the first is the importance of getting out of your comfort zone. You all talked about taking risks, whether it was raising your hand, stepping up for a new challenge, asking for what you want, challenging conventions. And I think that is just important for all of us to remember every day and to try every day to do something that gets us out of our comfort zone. And one of the things that struck me is that each one of you, and this is what I have found so inspiring, found a certain strength to make change happen for yourself, for your career, and sometimes for those of your colleagues. And that can never be forgotten. And that is something that's empowering, I think, for all of us. But I also want to pick up on something that Tia said when she opened the session and challenged all of us to think about one action that we can all take, because it's both personal, the things we can do, but it's also about the system and changing the way companies think and the way the systems are structured so that we don't consistently see these barriers coming up over and over for women, especially women of color, to succeed in technology. The second thing that I just want to observe is the importance of mentorship and sponsorship. And I would dare say every single woman in this room has likely inspired somebody through your mentorship or sponsorship or the role that you play and maybe not even know it. Now, true story, just moments before this panel started, I turned to one of our students and I asked, how did you hear about NPower? What motivated you to join the program and be in the room today? And she said, well, you know, I Googled a lot of programs because I knew that I wanted to take some kind of a boot camp or a training program, and I came across NPower. And she did something very clever. She went to LinkedIn and she searched on people who had graduated from the NPower program and saw where they are today. Regina, she found you. She found you and said, well, if that woman can be where she is today after going through NPower, that's the program for me. So sometimes you never know how your journey is going to touch somebody else. And I think that is, if there is one value of social media and doing it in a very professional way, it's certainly that. I want to close by thanking Google and PETA. Where's PETA? Thank you very much for hosting us today. Thank you. And I want to acknowledge a couple of our board members who are here in the audience, Gail Firestein and Rich Greenbaum. Gail from Pearson, Rich from Citi, Tia Hodges, and the whole Citi team who have been remarkably supportive of this conversation and who really encouraged this panel to keep it real. We had a lot of polite conversations about this topic, but I'm very, very pleased that there was just a lot of authenticity that came out today. Thank you very much.